OMAKASE, the life and words of author M. Karen. If this is our first time meeting each other, let me give you a brief introduction. My name is Max. I write books for a living. My pronouns are they, them, and welcome to the 37th episode of my writing advice and inspiration podcast, OMAKASE. If you are unfamiliar with the way this podcast goes, here's a quick overview. The first segment is all about my week and my creative process, the words I've been writing, the stories I've been telling, and the media I've been consuming. The second segment is viewer questions. Today we'll be tackling a familiar guide to how to tackle a month-long project like Camp Nanowrimo Month, as well as something I like to call my internet survival guide. And then the final segment is the prompt and writing challenge. I have an interesting, weird, bizarre prompt for you, and you are gonna twist it your own way. But before we get started with any of that, one piece of housekeeping. The description of this podcast and video contains a bunch of handy links. You may want to check them out. Anything from the theme song of the show to how you can support me and treat me to a cup of coffee or tea. Also, I lied. There's 2 items of housekeeping. The other one is that by the time this goes up, Camp Nanowrimo, also known as Camp National Novel Writing Month, is going to be well underway. If you are taking part in this month-long writing challenge, I would like to wish you the best of luck. May the words be ever in your favor. Alright, and with that, let's move over. That was not part of the ad read, but it's fine. Hey, may the words be ever in your favor. Anyhow, hi there. Welcome to the first segment of the show, my week. What have I been making? What have I been writing? What media have I been consuming? And the answer to that last question is, very simply said, not a lot. I've been very busy. My wife and I are currently working on the revival of our side channel, and I have been very, very, very busy writing. I have had some of the biggest writing days in years. I have been doing double writing sessions most of last week. I mean, of course there were breaks in there because, I do more than just write every single day, but I had these huge double sessions. I start the writing, and I write for a specified amount of time or a writing quota, and then I take a little break just to, I don't want to say level myself, but just to kind of focus again, because I find that sometimes when I get in the middle of writing, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. I get so focused and so lost in the writing that sometimes I do tend to miss or lose the thread in the story. That's why revision is very important. And that's why I actually like, instead of writing all day like I used to have these partitions, these segments in the middle of the workday where I just pause, reflect on what I've been writing, what I've been doing, and then get back into things. It's been nice. Now, I make it sound as though every time I write, I have to rein myself back in, as though a wild steed wanting nothing but to break free of the chariot. But that's not always true. It just also helps to just do a little bit of introspection, and also just to give yourself a break. Listen, take it from someone who does this. Creative work, like writing, you cannot expect it to be the same as mechanical work. The amount of energy, concentration, focus required to continuously sit down and write for a very long length of time is quite great. It's not easy. Hence, last week's episode, writing is hard. But, I mean, in truth, this week's writing has been difficult. But it has been difficult because I am arriving at the climax of this novel. And so I want to spend my weekly segment. I don't really have anything to report regarding media that I've been consuming. My lovely wife and I have a personal project we're working on, but it's really... it's not even that narrative intensive. I've been having fun on the side. I've been enjoying my free time and the moments of leisure that I can find here and there. It's been good. Now about the writing. The writing has been hard, yes. But today, I don't want to talk about that. I mean, I did it last week. But I want to instead talk about capital T, that feeling. I did not realize how far along this story had come until I finished yesterday's session. And I realized that the manuscript for this story, whose name I am not allowed to tell you, broke past the 80,000 word mark. I posted a little bit about it on Twitter. And probably my favorite part of that whole bit was how I was telling people to not congratulate me yet because that book is not finished. And that's part of the problem. And I wanted to take a moment to go over that feeling, but also just the nature of storytelling as a whole. Because when I first had the idea for that novel and I sat down, I thought it was going to be a novella. I thought it was going to take place over the course of a night. Not the writing, but the story. And I thought it was going to be 16,000 words. 16000. I thought it was gonna be short. And I don't want to give the impression that I'm a fool, because I am, but it's not... I don't always make the same mistake. It just tends to work out like that. Sometimes I write a story and it ends up being the number of words I thought it was gonna be. And then sometimes I have a story like this one, where every week I have to increase the word goal on Scrivener because I keep hitting it. I thought it was gonna be 16k. And then I kind of stopped worrying about it until I kept writing some more, and then I thought, okay, 50k. This story will be 50,000 words. And then it became 60, and then 70, and then 80, and now I don't even know what goal to put. I don't think I'm going to. I have the faint feeling that the story might end up being 100,000 words. You know, the big 100k. And it's most likely gonna happen. Mostly because I know myself. And mostly because... And people who have read my oldest stuff are gonna feel the most betrayed, and I know. I have grown to love to linger a little bit more in the endings. Just to linger a little more. I am so guilty of short and sweet. I am so guilty of that. I know. But the thing is this, and the thing that... it doesn't break my heart, but the thing that it's so hard to understand when you're outside, when you're not up here in my head 24/7, is that the books you're gonna be reading this year have been in the making for 2 or 3 years. And because writing is a craft in which no one becomes master, my writing continues to improve. Away from people's perception. And it pains me sometimes because I can see my growth in my writing, especially my earliest works. And I want nothing. I want for nothing but to just go back and give... I don't want to say remaster, but just give every single one of those novels the love that they deserve. And I will do that someday. Like, I want to make that clear. Someday I want to go back to the first three, the first three, and super expand on them. Each one of those was the beginning of a really long journey, and I really want to go there. I don't ever want to give the impression, but the matter of the fact is that the books I'm working on right now, you're not gonna get to read for a year or two at most. So I'm always in the future and the past. When you listen to this, I have already moved over to the next podcast. And yet the books of mine that you will be reading this year have been in the works for much longer. It's weird. It's a fun and interesting interplay between creating, consuming, and releasing content. Especially because when you're outside of the process, it feels as though it's a lot faster. But it isn't. Creating things takes a long time and a lot of work. And this is something that I'm going to bring up on the second question of today. But let's talk about that feeling. It's not the feeling that the story is going long. That actually doesn't matter. I know. I make a big show about how dreadful it is that the story keeps going longer and longer, but that actually isn't the problem. It actually isn't. The story will be as long as it needs to be. That right there is life. And I don't fight it. I know very well to not fight that feeling. The story will finish when the story wants to finish, and I will continue to be the translator, the relay, conduit. I think that's better, conduit. Whatever mechanical purpose I serve, I will continue to do it until the story is finished. That feeling is the realization that this story will be over. Now, I know what you're thinking. Max, you already knew the story was going to be over someday. I mean, you started writing it and everything that begins must end. And of course, I know that. I can look at the passing of the seasons and know that winter brings us to spring, and in time we will return to winter again. I know that. But it's different when you've been working with the same story for such a long time, and you begin to see the path ahead clears. The wilderness begins to make sense. The paths that seemed maze-like, the mountain that appeared impossible to climb, is just within reach. I am writing the final part of the book right now. Our two main characters are going to head into a place most strange, and within this place, they will stumble upon someone special, someone strange. And through the things that happen in that chapter, they will all learn about each other. I know it. I feel it. Halfway through yesterday's writing session, I started looking around, started thinking. I was almost pacing about the room because things clicked, and I knew this is what's going to happen next. I don't know the details. I'm still filling up the map. We're still traveling, we're still exploring, but I can tell by the shape of the land, the forms of the landscape. I can tell where we're going. And I know that our journey together will soon draw to a close. And that's weird. It's strange to be reminded again that the story ends. And that one day I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to be writing that story anymore. And I will move on to something else. And suddenly, parts in my brain that hadn't been active for a long time wake up, like a creature stirring from their slumber, coming out of hibernation. I have trained myself to not look for stories while working on a project. I have trained myself, and in truth, this podcast helps, because whenever I catch a story, I just put it in the list of prompts to bring up every week. It helps. But I can hear the rumbling of the bear's belly as it wakes, as it rises and leaves its quiet cave. I'm going to be hunting for stories soon, I think. In time. How long is there left in this story? There is a high chance 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks at most. 2 weeks at most, and then at around, from my point of view, 14 days. Less than half a month and this book will be complete. It may seem crazy, impossible to think, especially when you begin struggling to put words on page 1. But if you keep at it, you will find yourself feeling that feeling. Keep at it, okay? I promise I will keep at it too. I hope that helps. And I hope that if anything, I have reminded you that you can finish that novel. Okay? I know that you didn't ask a question, and I know that this isn't the question segment, but I got a little lost there. Though I did not lose the thread. Writing's fun. It's hard. And sometimes it just sucks. But it's great. Keep writing. Okay? Okay. And now, before we move over to the questions of the day, let me just tell you very quickly about the people who make this show possible. And that is you. My podcast is here thanks to you, the listeners. And, of course, the listeners who are so generous and decide to support me and what I do. I want to keep this podcast the way that it is. I want to be able to just talk to you honestly and truthfully. And your support helps a lot. It really does. The main way to support me is by treating me to a one-time donation, a cup of coffee, by going to ko-fi.com/mkaren. That is ko-fi.com/mkaren. The link is also in the description of this podcast. But of course, there's another way you can support me. If you want to listen to the show early, you can also support me through Patreon. Patreon.com/mkaren. And now, I just want to take a second to thank one of my most generous supporters. And that is Rival Moonlight. Rival Moonlight has a DeviantArt page. You can find out more about his writing and his art over at deviantart.com/rivalmoonlight. Every single person treating me to cups of coffee or supporting me through Patreon will get a shout out at the end of the show. So sit tight. And now, back to the show. The first question of the day is all about National Novel Writing Month and its little April version known as Camp Nanowrimo. A month-long challenge where writers or any kind of creative people seek to complete a goal within 30 days. The standard goal is completing a certain number of words by the end of the month. Now, you may be more familiar with the November main National Novel Writing Month, but there is 2 more months where that happens, and they're both called Camp Nanowrimo. I received a question from a dear viewer who has never done this, has no experience tackling a project like this, and wanted my advice. Now, if you have been following me for a long time, 90% of what I'm about to say, you already know. But there's one more thing. There's an all-new tip I want to add to my list of pieces of advice for anyone attempting a month-long challenge like this one, so please still tag along. First off, why attempt a challenge like this? Why do something like Camp Nanowrimo? Why give yourself a monthly goal and attempt to complete it at all costs? I think there are many reasons a person would like to do this. First and foremost is the challenge of it. Secondly, I would say a sense of community. Especially for Camp Nanowrimo, where you're put in cabins, in virtual cabins with other people, chasing their own creative endeavors, and creates a sense of solidarity. I know people who have met some of their closest friends through Nanowrimo. Just one of those moments where you post a comment in a video, and that leads you to talking with someone and developing a very close friendship. Community. Challenge. I'm struggling to find another word that starts with C, so that I could have it all be alliteration, but honestly, I think the biggest gain you can have from doing a challenge like this is building the habit. Writing is hard. Please see episode 36 of the podcast titled Writing is Hard. Writing is hard. And I know that I told you that writing doesn't really get easier with time. You just get used to the torture. And that's okay. It's not a bad thing. It means that if you can build the habit, if you're able to sit down today and get some writing done, you can do it tomorrow. That challenge doesn't change. It's the same every day. Some days you feel better, some days you feel worse. But if you can sit down and work on it, improve your habit, write that novel, it's all gain. I think another of the bonuses, and these are the things that people don't notice until they have developed the habit, but in order to be able to do something like this, unless you just kind of charge, head first into this without thinking about it, to be able to do a month-long challenge like this, you have to plan. You have to look at your time and tell yourself, okay, how many nights can I write? And for how long? The really useful thing about Camp Nanowrimo versus the main National Novel Writing Month in November is that for camp, you get to set your own goal. You get to look at your time and say, okay, I have this many days. Because this day I need off, I'm going to be off, I'm going to be going to this place in this week, I have school on these days, I have these things happening. These are the days that I can write. For how long can I write? Average all of that out, and then you have your number. That right there is the reasonable word count you can achieve by the end of the month. And to some people, that may be the most depressing thing in the world, to be able to realize, oh, writing a book takes time. And yeah, it does. But, there's no other way the book's gonna get done. You gotta sit down, you gotta put words on the page. But this here is actually a gift in disguise, because being able to look at your time, being able to look at your schedule, being able to just sit down, look at the calendar and say, that night I can write, that night I cannot write, and that's okay. In your mind, you're creating a space. You're visualizing the moment in which you're going to write, and you allocate it into. Don't mind the girls in the background. That being chinchillas. I realize that sometimes I just refer to them as girls, and that can be a little misleading. But back to the world of writing advice. Being able to look at the calendar and being able to mentally allocate the time and to also act on it. To tell people, hey, I can't do this that night because I have this to do. The reality is that to be able to write and finish a novel, you have to make sacrifices. You have to make the most out of the time that you have. Because we all have the same 24 hours, but we all have different responsibilities. If you have kids and school and work and college and you're juggling all of those at the same time, yes, your time is even more limited. But that's why being able to allocate time is so important. Even if it isn't a lot, being able to say, I can do this time, at this time, and I can get this done, and getting it done, that right there is victory. All these, community, challenge, habit, these are amazing things you can gain by doing a challenge like this. And I think people should give challenges like these a try. I don't think they're the be-all, end-all. I don't think so. But I do know how empowering it can be to just jump into the waters. And right now, there's a chance that you are listening to this and you think to yourself, well, it's the 5th or the 6th or the 7th of April, and I'm already too late to start. You're not. And you don't have to have it be a Camp Nanowrimo or November. You can start writing and start developing goals for yourself right now. Now, if you are going to be attempting a challenge like this, here's just a quick barrage of pieces of advice. It's a lot of them. I'm going to go through them. I'm not going to go through them quickly. I'm going to go through them at a nice leisurely pace so that anyone can digest them and really appreciate them. Really write them down if you need to. It begins like this. Do not allocate exactly the amount of time that you have free for writing. Something is likely to go wrong, and if you only have an hour to write every single day and you specifically allocate 1 hour of writing time, you're already shooting yourself in the foot. Round down. You're not lowering the bar. You're not giving yourself a smaller goal. You're just really accounting for the possibility that life is going to get in the way. And it is. Also, if you get sick, or if something happens, or if you're unable to write for any reason or other, don't beat yourself up. Don't make yourself miserable. Life happens. Talking about life happening, back up your writing. This is not even about NaNoWriMo. This is just real life advice. Someday, your computer is going to die. Someday, your hard drives are going to stop spinning. Or more likely, really, the little sensor that reads the data in your hard drive is going to stop moving. That's right there the thing that actually kills most hard drives. Someday that's going to happen. Every single piece of machinery that has moving pieces has an ultimate expiration date. Back up your writing. Back it up on the cloud. Have multiple places where you have it stored. As someone who has had multiple computers die without warning, and total hard drive failure on top of that, which means I could not recover anything, I can assure you I felt way better about that because I had backed up all of my writing. And another quick piece of writing advice, a classic one. try your best to write at the same time every day. If anything, just to teach your brain to allocate that time. If it is early in the morning, if it is late at night, it does not matter. Just try to do it at the same time. And now, for an all-new piece of writing advice. Not only for anyone out there who wants to do a challenge like this, but really for every single one of us. And that is to please, 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 please. I want you to embrace JOMO. JOMO. The joy of missing out. It's worse for the people after my time. It's pretty bad for my generation, but it's even worse for all the kids. Oh, I feel like an old person just saying that. But the kids nowadays who grew up with streaming services, who grew up with the constant machine gun-like fire and release of new things coming out all the time. Unfortunately for us as writers is we have so much time to create. You may want to keep this in mind for the next segment, but we have so much time to create. We do not have enough time to consume everything. Miss out. You don't have to watch every show on Netflix. You actually can't. And I'm going to bring this up later. But I like it so much as a nice way to gain perspective in life that I'm going to bring it up right now, okay? How many people do you think find themselves at their deathbed wishing they had seen more episodes of that show on Netflix? I think about that a lot. I imagine a scale and I see catching up, staying current, knowing what everything my friends are talking about versus writing, creating. And I'll be honest with you, I have really just committed to being a slowpoke. That is, the Pokemon Slowpoke, who I believe is the embodiment of JOMO. There's times when it takes me years to catch up on shows. There's still 10,000 Marvel movies my spouse and I haven't seen. And that's okay. There are Netflix shows that my friends recommend, and in the back of my head, I go, oh, these are interesting points you bring up. I'm probably never gonna watch it, because I'm never gonna have that time. Or rather, I am never going to prioritize that over spending time creating. Priorities it doesn't really fit with challenge, community, and habit. I wish I could just come up with, synonyms that started with the letter C. But priorities. You just know, something big's gonna come out, a new game's gonna come out, a new show's gonna come out, a movie's gonna drop out of nowhere, and then you're gonna get that feeling, wouldn't it be cool if I just played a little bit of it? If I watched a little bit of it. At the end of the day, I wish to inspire you to just let those things come and go. There will always be more things to watch. Okay? Okay. And now, let's move over to the next question of this show. Last week, I was talking about a question a viewer sent me. And it was a question about... It was literally framed as, what if everyone hated what you created? And I made a very good point as to why you really shouldn't worry about that. But of course, in perfect fashion, I received a question in my email asking me, but what if people actually hate your writing, though? What if you experience what many people experience on the internet, and that is harassment, bullying? I made a video about this a while back, which it was funny. Not my video. I think I did a really good job with that video, but like 99% of the reception was like what I expected, and then you had some. It's really funny getting harassment on a video about harassment. But regardless of that, today I want to talk to you about what I like to call my writer's guide to surviving in the internet. Now, who am I to be giving you advice about this? Well, I have been an openly queer Hispanic person creating content on the internet for many years. And I can tell you that I get a lot of comments on the internet, comments that are primarily made of homophobic and transphobic slurs. And those kind of comments have been ever present right from the beginning, right from the start, even back when I was just creating prompts and writing inspirational posts on Tumblr. As people creating content, you need to exist in the internet. That's not true. You don't need to exist in the internet, but it's helpful to exist in the internet. It's a nice place for you to be able to broadcast to people when stuff comes out, the status of things coming out, etc., etc., etc. It's just useful to have a social media presence. But there is always the unfortunate possibility of receiving harassment on the internet. And most of that is because of the nature of anonymity. People can just say what they want to say. And again, as someone who has been dealing with those sort of comments right from the start, and they have never gone away, I just use tools to just immediately, automatically make all those people disappear. And right off the start, it is comments like that, or, really explanations like that, that immediately send people in a different trail of thought. Because when I really say things like, hey, someone has posted horrible things in my videos, and I tell them that I just, vanish those people to the shadow realm, they tell me that that's wrong. That shouldn't I be conversing with these people? Shouldn't I be explaining my point of view? Which is really silly. Okay, let's be real here. If someone is just posting like homophobic slurs in my comment section, I don't really think that's an invitation for me to explain why LGBT people deserve, I don't know, to exist, or to just exist in general. I always try to be the nicest person in the world to people who say things like that, but at the same time, I'm just like, where are you coming from? Because the thing is this. Forget about the whole trying to teach people to be better. Forget about all that, okay? The very first point in my writer's internet survival guide that keeps changing names, my guide to how to survive on the internet, is this, okay? Spend less time on the internet. Not because people are mean on the internet. The thing is that by spending more time on the internet, you have less time to be spending on the writing. That really is the key here. And now there's something I want to make very clear right now. This wasn't a revelation for me. This was like the thing that I did right from day one. I realized, because I've been on the internet, I know how people can be. The instant that I started receiving harassment like that, I just, snapped my fingers or clapped or whatever Thanos does, and I made all those people disappear. Mostly because I don't have the time. Like, listen, I don't even have the time to manually ban people anymore. I just tell YouTube to vanish anyone who ever uses any kind of transphobic or homophobic slur, and just done. They are done. That's why I have tools that just help me do that automatically. Why? Because time is such a precious resource. And I remember how sometimes a comment would get through. And listen, having an automatic thing that just hides or banishes people who do or say one particular thing is not effective for all the harassment in the world, but I still remember getting really, really bad and awful comments and thinking about them and feeling bad about it. And not even that someone hurt my feelings, but rather that someone thought to say something like that to another person. And I remember getting that feeling a long time ago, and I remember that reading that comment stuck with me, and it made me feel so bad. And it made me feel worse because I wasted so much time in that day feeling bad about it. And this one person who probably didn't even spend like 10 seconds thinking about what they were going to say or what they would do robbed me of so much time. And I saw the seam. I saw the thread connecting the comment section, to a furnace into which I was just casting away my time. And I realized just how much time I had wasted doing nothing. Feeling miserable over something that a random person on the internet said. It was such a waste of time, too. Time that I could have spent, forget even writing, I could have spent it doing something fun, something leisure-like. And I'll tell you right now, because when I posted that original video on cyberbullying and all that stuff, I got people going on and on about how you, as a person, I guess, you had to defend yourself to these people. You had to blow them up on Twitter or something, quote them or take screenshots and then blast them. And to me, I don't want to say that I looked at those and I was like, that's cute. But I looked at those and I'm like, man, you're gonna waste so much time on this. Like this person's talking about posting a whole Twitter thread about how they were gonna break down the person's statement word by word and explain how wrong they were, and the whole time I'm like, you need to just get back to writing, friend. You just need to stop doing this. And listen, that's silly. Let's all just stop for a second and admit that's silly. That's a huge waste of time. I don't want to say, because that to me feels like an ego thing, and I guess maybe I don't have an ego. I don't know. I just value my time very, very, very much, and that's why I want to remind you, as the number one point in my guide to how to survive in the internet, that time is precious. Feel free to go back to that to the scene that I set up in the previous question. Do you think you would find yourself saying, man, I sure wish I had spent more time arguing with people on the internet. I sure wish I had spent more time taking screenshots and blasting random strangers on Twitter. That's silly. That's silly. Acknowledge, appreciate, value time. And the one thing I want to kind of slide under the door, because I said it really quickly, but I want to say it again, is that muting people is probably better, especially if you're on Twitter, mostly because blocking is something that people can know about. But if you mute someone, that person never realizes it or never hears from you ever again, never even knows. And I feel like that really de-escalates things, I know, it's a little silly to have a guide to how to survive on the internet be literally one point, and that point says, spend less time on the internet. I know that. It's silly. Purposefully so. But there's one more thing I want to say, okay? And whenever I talk about this, someone comes out of the woodwork and says something along the lines of, but if you're muting everyone you talk to, you're never going to receive any constructive criticism. And I feel like that kind of comment comes from a place of ignorance, because I didn't say anything about muting people who are giving you constructive criticism, mostly because, one, constructive criticism in the internet are used silly, and also because people who are phrasing their feedback in a useful and constructive way probably wouldn't get muted by a system that is looking for transphobic and homophobic slurs. But I think that this is something that gets brought up. Shouldn't you spend time reading through other people's opinions of your writing? And for that, I will have you reference point number one: spend less time on the internet. Here's the thing about criticism. In the internet, it is seldom constructive. Like, have you ever read a review on the App Store? Have you seen reviews on Amazon? My thing is this, and this is like the most ancient piece of writing advice, okay? Everyone has an opinion, and everyone is entitled to their opinion. The question is, whose opinion do you value the most? These should be the voices you reach to, the people you ask for advice, and the people you ask for criticism. Please note that I said people you look up to, people you respect, and people who inspire you. People who are willing to tell you the harsh truth. People who don't want you to just get off easily. People who would chase you, grab you down, hold you down, and tell you, I believe in your writing, but you have to fix this. You can't release the novel this way. Those are the people who can help you. People who believe in you, people who want you to succeed, and who want your writing to be the best. You can't please everybody. And you definitely shouldn't go around reading what other people think of your writing. And here people will disagree, but again, go back to point number one: spend less time on the internet. I have a merciless editor. I have a group of writerly friends who are all merciless with my writing, who will and have raked me over the coals over my mistakes. The times where I, unknowingly or knowingly so, took shortcuts, where my writing faltered, where a character's arc was not as successful as it could have been. They are the people I look up to. They are the people's whose opinions mean the world to me. I know, because someone can just misunderstand this and take it as though, you should find yourself an echo chamber. People who just all love your writing and nobody wants you to improve. But that's literally not what I'm saying. If you want to survive in the internet, you probably should spend less time on the internet. More time creating. Because, at least for me, creating is what makes life so much fun. And when in doubt of your own writing, reach to those who mean the most to you. Those who want to see your writing succeed. And that really is all there is to it. To the creative types like us, we ultimately, when the time for sacrifices comes, time on the internet is usually the first one to go. And that's okay. I know that we got pretty serious there for a second, but I think that it's something that we kind of need to talk about. Especially if you also happen to be a queer person of color. Because no matter what you do, and especially if you're making content on the internet and posting it on YouTube, you will receive people like that are going to show up. And you can waste so much time looking at those comments. That's why I don't. That was the sound of a rando on the internet being banished to the Shadow Realm. And you know what? Life goes on. The world keeps spinning. And the podcast must go on. Let's talk about the prompt for today. The challenge. In case you missed it, we have a brand new format for the prompt. The way that it works is this. I am going to propose an idea, a concept. Today it is a mechanic for your story. No, not someone to fix the car, but rather a technical part of the storytelling process that I want you to play with. I'm going to give you a week to think about, a week to maybe get back to me. I want to talk about what I would have done with last week's prompt, and also maybe showcase a little bit of what people were saying. So how about it? Are you excited? Do you want to start talking about stories? Because I do. So let's dive right in. Let us begin first. Before we even talk about last week and what the prompt was and how we played with it, let's tackle this week's prompt. I usually like to give you a moment, a situation, a feeling. But today it is a mechanic, a technical twist of the narration. And I want to know how you would play with this. As an additional challenge, I would like you to come up with a title for your story. And I know that to some of you listening, that may sound like the worst thing ever, or the most impossible thing. But training yourself, practicing coming up with titles can help coming up with more titles in the future easier. So without any more preamble, your challenge for this week is this. Write a scene or create a prompt based on the following. A story told by a narrator who is a person who is telling the story, but who does not introduce themselves formally until way later in the story. I caught myself. I almost started going on and on about what I would do, but you're gonna have to wait until next week to hear about that. So there is the challenge. There is something for you to think about. Something for you to consider in between now and the next time we meet. And now, let's talk about last week's challenge. Last week, I gave you only a concept, a title. And I promised that I would tell you what I would do. The title, of course, was Body Relatives. Body Relatives. And immediately, right away, there were things that I didn't think about. I want to give a shout out to longtime commenter, longtime watcher, Timber Wolfie, whose comments are always a delight to read. I did not think about doppelgangers. That's actually a really clever point. I didn't think about that. I had a very... Okay, we're gonna get to mine in a minute. There were a couple more very specific prompts, which I also really like that. And I just want to say, again, thank you so much to everyone who actually sent in their thoughts. I got one in the email, but it was very personal. And it's the sort of thing where, I would rather not share it whole cloth, mostly because a few of you did mention that you were interested in maybe working on it. So I want to say that I read them. Trust me, I cherish the wonderful comments that I get. And now, with all that stuff out of the way, you want to know what I would have done. You want me to talk about my experience with this prompt. And every story begins as a seed. An inkling of an idea, an inkling of a concept. That's what a prompt is. It's not specifics. It's general, wide strokes of the pen. The details are what matters. And Body Relatives spoke to me not as one word or the other, but as a combination. I imagined a world where almost a Twilight Zone-esque world where genes are passed whole cloth. And I realize now that, like, DNA genes and the jeans I'm wearing are kind of pronounced the same, so transferring genes whole cloth was really silly. But what I imagined again this Twilight Zone-like world in which birth transfers all DNA to the next generation. A world where the current generation looks just like the last. I thought about the implications, because I feel like that's... this story begins as a seed, and just, a world where everyone looks the same depending on their bloodline. It's weird. I mean, it's max weird, that's for sure. But what are the implications for this world? I'm not just going to be creating, a 23-minute episode where we touch on it and then we never see it ever again. What would it be like to live in this world? What would happen to the human identity? What would happen to identity itself? What would be the social expectations? What would this mean for history? For the background of culture? And even now, I keep thinking about it, and I keep turning it in my hands like it's a puzzle, and I'm not sure about it. I really don't know if I like it, because I feel like it could very easily start treading on grounds that I don't particularly would like to write about. That's why it wasn't the only twist on this prompt that I liked. There was another twist, a more science fiction-y one, that is way more my cup of tea. And I had this idea, and every once in a while, everybody does this. Everybody has one or two genres that we know are tired, but we still want to write about it. Everyone has a zombie novel inside of them. That's what I've always said. Everyone has a zombie apocalypse novel inside of them. And I do. Someday I'll write it. I know I will. But I also have a robot novel inside of me. A novel about people and mechanical bodies and the nature of the self. Our bodies don't last forever. And they're not here. And they change. And I am not the person now that I was 10 years ago. And I will be a different person in 10 years. But what would it be like to live in a world where when your time comes, you will take upon the body of your eldest, most relative, and you will look like them, and you will enter their body like a pilot sitting upon the cockpit? What is that like? What would it be like to live in a culture where you know that when your time comes, you will step into the mechanism that your progenitors stepped into before you, and their progenitors before them? What would it be like? That intrigues me. And I feel that through the act of writing, I would discover a greater meaning in there. I don't want to give the impression that my stories don't start with a feeling or a question that I wish to answer. But it takes a little while to get there. The first third of the novel is you showing up to a party full of people you don't know. And through writing and talking and stumbling and saying dumb things and trying your best not to make a fool of yourself, you start to become more comfortable with these strangers, these characters on the page who you do not know yet, but feel oh so real. All I can say is that I can see clearly now the question that the novel is seeking to answer. And when the time comes, I will go back and through revision, bring out that question into the foreground, so that the actions and the words in the story ring ever so true. Stories begin as little seeds, as little nothings, but they grow. They get away from us. They become greater than we could have ever imagined. And then we are the small little thing, standing before a towering, amazing mass of words. And it is our duty to make sense of them. It is our duty to give them form. So dear writerly friend, pick up your pen and get back to writing. And so, welcome back to episode 37 of OMAKASE, my writing advice and inspiration podcast. Today's episode was a little bumpy, but I hope that I gave you another point of view, and that if anything, I was good company during your drive to work or back home, during the time that you're walking your dog, folding your laundry, washing dishes, or hyping yourself up to jump in and start writing. There are a bunch of handy links in the description. If you really enjoy the show, please consider leaving a rating on iTunes. It means so much. It really does. And as my lovely spouse reminds me every week, reviews and ratings are the only way that this podcast is going to continue to grow. So please, if you really enjoy the show, consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review. Okay? I hope you have a lovely time between now and the next time we meet. Okay? Okay. I am now going to jump over to the end of the video club where I give everybody a shout out. And I probably am going to say something really silly. You don't have to stay if you don't want to. Just giving you a heads up. If you're here for the advice, it's through. It's over. Go home. Pack your things and go home. The silliness starts now. And also me not editing starts now. Hey guys, welcome back. Today's episode was so fun. A little bumpy. It's true. I think I went a little bit longer than I would have liked on, I went a little bit longer on the question about bullying. Man, it was funny. It was funny. Making a video about cyberbullying and getting harassment on the internet, and then people sending harassment through the internet to that video. That was funny. That's me drinking from my water bottle. Don't worry, I'm not just making horrible, bizarre noises. The thing I wanted to say, and the thing that I hope some people understand, is that you can waste so much time combing through those comments. And like, it's the thing where like, I'm not perfect at it. Listen, I'm not perfect anything, but I catch myself. It's not that I catch myself reading bad comments. I catch myself about to like click on the comment section of another person's video, or check the comments on like a blog post, or just read the tweets or the replies below the tweet that I was linked to. And I try to catch myself. I try to just say, to pull the brakes and say, no, I am not going to waste any more gosh doodly darn time reading this trash. Alright. Okay, listen. The lovely people who are leaving the sweetest comments on YouTube, like you guys are worth it. You guys are the only reason why I haven't disabled comments on YouTube. I get so many bad comments. Okay, I still have so much in my chest about that. Like, you have no idea. Like, okay. See? I'm catching myself. I'm gonna say one thing. The worst kind of comment is not even the explicitly homophobic or transphobic comments, which, trust me, I do get plenty of. But it is the comments by people who think they are being sensible, but they are not really realizing the really gross things they are saying. You should see the number of questions I get every week from people asking me what genitalia I have in my comments. The kind of stuff where, like, you know, the auto blocker is not gonna catch that. But I just see that, you know, and for that split second I go, man, someone thought that was a thing you could say to someone. That's weird. And also, who even asks that? It's so weird. It's not even offensive anymore. It's just kind of like, it's just so weird. The internet is a trash fire, so don't even, you know, don't concern yourself with what people say in the internet. Anyhow, I sounded so old and bitter. The internet is a trash fire. The internet was a mistake. Hey guys. No, it wasn't. Because it's a bountiful wealth of information, of places to learn, of things, of media to consume and enrich ourselves. And it's also a place where lovely people send me lovely comments. You thought I was going to talk about people donating to me. That's not even that. No, I get a lot of really good comments, and as I mentioned, it's the reason why I haven't just turned off comments on YouTube. Because of people like Timberwolfie. And, you know, the tank that's driving past my house. Oh, I was about to make a little marker to do an edit, but you know what it is. It's the end of the video club. I'm not allowed to do any edits. Let's do some shoutouts. You know, while the train's rolling by. I want to give a big shout out to the lovely people who are supporting me through coffee.com/mkaren and patreon.com/mkaren. Beginning with the people treating me to cups of coffee every single month. And I want to give a big shout out to Lishadra, Angela, Kristen Lofton, and Polly Craftool. Thank you so much. Wait, hold on. And Vic, who just treated me to a cup of coffee, like literally now. Hey Vic, I'm happy to see that video was helpful. Aw, thanks for the sweet comment, and thanks for the cup of coffee. And now, let me give a shout out to every single lovely person supporting me through patreon.com/mkaren. Beginning with Rival Moonlight, Soul Muse, Irina Phoenix, A. Howard, Alyssa Dudley, Heather is Writing, Nicola, Brenda, Amelia, Pat Eitson, Melanie Ashford. I think you're new. I think Melanie's new. Melanie Ashford. Ashford. Okay, that's the thing about speaking 3 languages now. I have to like in a split second I have to pick which phonetic system I want to speak with. Melanie Ashford. Shido Tsubasa. See, that's me switching right there. Alex Cast. Alistair Baywood. Caitlin. Blarg. Kameshwar Rao. Shaluri. Kathy Lindsay. Kaylee. Mary Foster Smith. Juan Nunes. Raquel Fernandez. Sylvia Leitila. Janos Hebatsky. Skydy White. Renee Solia. Connor. Jesu Wiki. Rhiannon August, Nicolay, J. Turner Kirkwood, James, Arasos! Someday I'm gonna get a noise complaint. Noam Sahar, Novels and Tomes, Kiel, Roa, Lier Killo, Clem Pastor, Nicole Grissom, Biting the Sun, Christiane, Shimmer Tales, Amanda Stevens, C.E. Richards, Zero Woods, K.M. Anderson, and Alexel Hoshi. Hey gang, thank you so much for your support, everybody. You are all wonderful people. Hey guys, I hope that you enjoyed today's silly podcast. I hope that I served to be a source of inspiration today. Or if anything, again, a nice moment of respite from the world. Writing is hard. It will probably always be hard. But that's okay. It just means that if you can do it today, you can do it tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. And just like putting your foot in front of the other helps us walk, and walking makes a journey. Word by word, we build sentences, and these sentences become chapters, and those chapters become novels. Please keep going. And remember, today is a good day to write.